Yep, okay, we can begin.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Councillor Austin Roberts, and I am the Chair of the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee at Conwy Council. I can confirm
in progress.
that the committee officer has conducted a sound check before the start of the meeting, so I assume everyone can hear me. Show of hands, thumbs. Can everybody hear me? Can I welcome everyone to today's meeting where we are all attending remotely. In addition to cabinet committee members, we also have non-committee members, cabinet members and officers joining us to assist with our discussions. For those viewing the live stream and the recording, committee members are identified with an asterisk next to the name. The meeting will be recorded and live streamed and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and to choose your language of choice. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You can also use the chat facility, but please note that I may not be able to monitor the chat facility during the meeting. All microphones will be muted. If you have indicated your intention to speak, you will be invited to turn your microphone on. If you leave your device for any reason, can you please ensure you are muted and that you turn your video off? Thank you very much. At the agenda now. Item 1, apologies.
Saville, also Councillor Wyn Jones will be late arriving, and also Ewan Davis, Chief Executive, will be late arriving.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest.
Councillor Jeff Corey.
Thank you, Chair. Forward work programmes, page 42 and page 58, to consider a report in relation to the disposal of Tier Prince, and also page 131, capital programme 2122, traffic network management, traffic congestion relief, A548, Tier Prince access. Thank you.
Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Item 3, urgent matters.
No, not aware of any, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4A, to approve and sign as a correct record minutes of the previous meetings, 4th of October 2021, pages 4 to 16. Are there a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Nigel Smith and Councillor Dave Rees. Thank you very much. Informal show of hands, please, that you accept. Thank you very much. Item 4B, to approve and sign as a correct record minutes of the previous meetings, the 18th of October 2021, pages 17 to 26. A proposer and the seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Jeff, and thank you, Councillor Pauline. Everybody happy? Show of hands. Thank you very much. Item 5A, minutes of the informal meeting of Overview and Scrutiny Committee Chairs and Vice Chairs on the 4th of October 2021, pages 27 to 30. Proposer and seconder. Councillor Phil Capper, thank you, and Councillor Dave Rees, thank you. Okay, I can note that they have been.
Item
5B, minutes of the informal meeting of Overview and Scrutiny Committee Chairs and Vice Chairs held on the 28th of October 2021, pages 31 to 35. Is there a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Phil Capper and Councillor David Rees. Everybody happy? Thank you very much. I can note that they have been passed as well. Item 6, questions to Cabinet members.
No, we have no questions, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Item 7, to review the forward work programme. And I have an apology from Dawn Hughes. Sadly, because she's not well today, she's not with us today, so she won't be presenting this. So does anybody want to make a comment? Sally will note them down and pass them on. Does anybody want to say anything? No? Everybody happy? Okay then, I can ask you then to note that they are correct. Can I have a proposer? Nigel Smith, thank you. And Councillor Aaron, thank you. Show of hands, please. Everybody happy? That's it. Thank you very much. Item number 8. To consider a recommendation from the Review of Education Funding Task and Finish Group. And I think Councillor James Lusted or Peter Lewis are going to present this item.
Well, thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Peter Lewis.
I'm going to present this item. I think members will note that the minutes are quite comprehensive in terms of the discussion that took place. And I'm happy to answer any queries members might have, but the recommendations there are for you to see on page 87. And I have to point out that we really do think it's advantageous that we have a working group that covers all sectors, so at least we do get this funding model right for the long term, rather than relying on the diagnostic model that we've been operating in the past. So I'd like to propose that we endorse the recommendations of the Task and Finish Group, Chair.
Diolch, Cynghorydd.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Lewis.
I can't see anybody's hand.
Can I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, Councillor David Rees, thank you. Right, I shall now take this to the vote. Sally.
Yeah, so I'll read out your names, so it's for, against or abstain. Councillor Phil Capper.
For.
Councillor Jeff Corrie.
For.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
For.
Councillor Chris Hughes.
Obliged.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
Obliged.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor John Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
For.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
Caught me out there. For. Sorry.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Aaron Wynne.
Obliged.
Yeah, that's unanimous, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. I can then confirm for the recording that that has been passed. Thank you very much. Right, number 9A, Corporate Health and Safety Programme Annual Report 2020-2021. And I think Gareth Roach is presenting this, pages 89 to 111. Gareth Roach.
Okay, hello everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. Just before I start, Phil Davis, our programme sponsor, would like to introduce the report, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Gareth. Yes, just
Good morning.
A very quick introduction from myself. This, as stated in the introductory paragraph, is a summary of the first full year of work of this very, very comprehensive programme. Lots of detail, but Gareth will walk you through and will be aided and abetted by Richard as and when it is timely. So thank you. Over to you, Gareth.
Okay, thank you, Phil. And thanks to Richard. Yes, so Richard, at any point you obviously step in if you would like to. So what I'd like to do really is in your packs, what you have is the main report and 3 appendices, which was the programme definition document, which really defines what the health and safety programme is, our structure, which has been updated, and our equality impact assessment, which has also been updated. So as Phil said, really, this is the first full year of delivery. And looking at sort of 3.1 in your report, what I would like to say is that the last sort of 18 months, as we know, has been very different. And that's the time that we have been running the programme, really. We started to establish it early in 2020, and then obviously the world changed. But what we've done is that has, in a way, influenced what we're doing. And I would like to say, first off, that Richard and team have played a huge part in the organisation's response to COVID. And that has, in a way, influenced some of the projects, I would say, in the programme. So in the last 18 months, really, since we started to establish the programme, we came along to Scrutiny and Cabinet in July last year. So we've had just a little bit over a year of full delivery of the programme. And just to recap, the programme really brings together a set of projects and tasks which are both health and safety and human resources led initiatives. So it's gathering together lots of different projects and tasks that all kind of link to ensuring that we as an organisation and as individuals are competent in what we do and what we deliver. And that also links to our contractors as well in terms of some of the projects. So it's a set of projects and tasks which is set to run initially until 2024. And when I say programme, I describe that as a set of projects and tasks that are linked, really, and we manage that in a very governance heavy, very structured way, as with any programme that we have. So as I say, we were approved in July 2020, and since then the programme has met 7 times. We've had 7 programme boards, and I think one of the good things that we've been doing is at each and every one of those programme boards we showcase a project, and by that I mean the project manager or the task lead comes along, can describe in detail what that project is, meet the board members, and it's very direct contact, which I think has been very useful and help with understanding of the projects and tasks. So we will continue that as we go forward, but I do think that's been very successful. In addition to the programme boards, we have officer groups which have met in the same frequency. That allows each of the project leads and task leads to talk about what they're doing, any issues they're facing, and I schedule those in advance of the programme board so we can then escalate issues to the board. That's worked really well. In addition, I have individual catch-ups with each of the project and task leads on a 2-monthly basis, or more frequently if needed. And we've also put in place specific training for those leads, which I've been delivering around CAMs and things like that. So it's a very much, over the last year to 18 months, we've very much established the programme. We've had lots of meetings, and I do feel now that we've made some good progress, which was my main focus for today, really. One of the key things that's changed this year is we decided to put in place another group called the Implementation Group. The reason for this is a number of the projects have to approach each of the services for information of different sorts. We wanted to make sure, especially with everything else that's going on, that those services are not overwhelmed or confused by the requests we're making. So we've put this group together to ensure that those requests for information are coordinated. So what we do now within this implementation group, the leads of the tasks or projects that need that information meet with their respective contacts from each service. So we're piloting this at the moment with leisure services. We have a second meeting next week, and so far that's going well, because we can see much more clearly what we need from each service, how those information requests overlap, and we can make sure that if there are any issues in getting that information from the service, we will be aware of them. So that's good. That's something we've started this year and will continue to do so. Once we've completed the work with leisure services, we'll move on to another service and so on. Right, so as you'll see in your report pack, we have 8 projects and tasks. At the start, we had 6, but we've added 2 new tasks to the programme this year. My first update is on positions competencies. That's led by Delith from Health and Safety. And that's really about making sure that individuals know what's expected of them, have received the training and development that they need, and that we know what the competencies are for each job role, and that they're maintained and improved over time. So in the last year, contact's been made with all the services, and it's been made very clear to services what's needed from each of them, such as risk assessments, training matrices, and other information. So contact has been made and work's been underway with a number of services, but now at the moment, the focus, as I say, is leisure services. In addition, a competency management system workflow model has been drafted, and that is a visual to make sure that everybody understands how this system works and what's required from each of the services. So in addition to leisure services, work's been undertaken with youth service, CDS as was, and corporate HR. We did accept some requests for delays from some services because there was such a feeling of everything else that was going on with the pandemic, and we took those requests for delay to the programme board and they were approved. And I must say the board's been very understanding and supportive, because we all know, of course, that it's been a very, very particular time and services have had a lot on their plates. So the programme and the projects obviously adapt, and we can still feel that by 2024, when the first sort of pause in the programme might be, that we will get through the work of this project as needed. The second project is implementation of CAMS Hazard Manager module, and that's part of our CAMS performance management system. And that's all about, again, risk assessments, making sure that we can take hazards that might apply to the work we do and turn them into controlled risks, basically. So they'll all be part of this system called CAMS, and that's led by Blethen from Health and Safety. So a pilot on this has been held with Venue Cymru, and work's also underway with education services and ERF as well, environment, roads and facilities. But also again now, the focus is on leisure services as part of the coordinated implementation group. So the platform which hosts the Hazard Manager is currently changing and being redeveloped into a better product, basically. And so that work's ongoing. It hasn't caused the project to pause by any means, and work's still underway with leisure. Great input as well from education, really a good uptake on this from education services too. So work's continuing, but we're making improvements to the Hazard Manager module, which will essentially be the authority's risk assessment database. So everything that we do, for example, if I was using a strimmer, what I would need to have would be detailed in a risk assessment to make sure I was doing that safely and properly. And that would all be detailed in the risk assessment that's in the risk assessment database. Okay, so what I would say is that for this project, COVID has had an influence in that last year, we had to do a lot of new risk assessments because of the pandemic. And in a way, that has helped the services in relation to how they record tasks and activities. And that has helped them to see what they need to do with this project. So that is kind of one of the influences I spoke about due to the pandemic. Okay, our third project is called Job Description Centralization. That's now led by Sarah Hughes from HR. And this is about making sure that we have all of the job descriptions for every role held in a central place, which will be within our electronic document management system. And that's going to ensure that any version of the job description that a service is working from is the same one that HR has. So it's very much coordinating those JDs and person specifications to make sure that we are all working from the same one, basically. So a pilot was held with Theatres and Conference Centre, and work again is commenced with ERF. It's another one of the projects that is now going to focus on leisure because of the implementation group. And in addition to looking at all the different job roles, it's making some changes around vacancy control forms, for example. It's produced a new recruitment guide and a new starter checklist. So there are certain outputs from this project that will help a lot of different processes that we have, such as vacancy control, for example. So the work's ongoing. Currently with leisure, we've had a change in project manager in this project, but I do feel it's been quite a smooth handover this year. So that's ongoing and part of the implementation group. Right, project 4 is the implementation of our asset management software strategy. And that looks at a system called TechForge, which is basically the depository of information about all of our sites and land and buildings and so on. And that's an upgrade of the system to a much more user-friendly, mobile-friendly, cloud-based application. So the first part of the project was to get that upgrade done and the data transferred and migrated. That has happened. It's been one of our key outputs this year. It's been really well managed by Steve Lee from Estates and Asset Management. And as you can see from the report, as of August, over 37,000 documents were stored on the new system. Custom reports have been developed. There have been particular training sessions with different groups and individuals, such as facilities management, surveyors, schools, cluster managers, and others. So the training has kind of been tailored to the individual needs. So we've already had some audits of the system, and it's gone really well, to be honest. It's been a great success. The system has been demonstrated more than once to our program board, and that's been really well received, so much so that we have a member development session on the system planned for February 2022. So the project has reached the end of its first stage, but it's going to continue and to look at further additional software capabilities and developing further the mobile app side of things. So it's been a great success, really well managed by Steve Lee from Estates and Asset Management. Okay, our 5th project is health and safety standards in care homes, and that is a spin-off really from the old Control of Contractors project. And that looks to provide all nursing, residential and domiciliary provisions with a health and safety standard, which we as an authority need them to meet. So we did initially start work on this project. It began before this programme. It began in 2019. But for a number of reasons, such as the departure of the project manager from the authority, and then, of course, the huge impact of the pandemic on the care sector, we paused things. We now have a new project lead, Mark Bowler from Social Care, supported very much and very ably by Christian Boyle from Health and Safety. We've started the project afresh with a new approach to look at how each of those care settings can have a standard that it will meet, and how we'll work both from the health and safety team and social care to make sure that those checks are in place. So that's very recently changed. A proposal has gone to our programme board and to social care and so on, and that's been accepted. And it's a new approach to the project, basically, in its early days. But we feel that it's the right approach in terms of the amount of care settings that we'd need to look at, and obviously with the resource that's in place. But we do feel it's a good step forward to restart this project. Okay, that now takes me to our 3 tasks. A task is kind of a simpler level of project, basically, which doesn't need as much project management, but still really important pieces of work. So the first one is led by Cheryl Roberts from Corporate HR, and that's our PDR review, that being performance development and review. We're looking at changing the process to make it perhaps less paper heavy, and more about the conversations that need to happen, not just at 2 set points in the year, but whenever we as individuals need to discuss things with our own line managers. So it was paused in early 2020 due to the pandemic. After That was following a really well-received presentation at SMT in, I think, the March of 2020. Because of channeling lots of resource into responses to the pandemic, we paused this task. It's now recommenced, and we've already had discussions with the unions and with staff internally, and that's been well received. So we now have a plan to take forward the work, and at SLT on the 6th of October, it was agreed that Conway proceeds with the current wellbeing conversations and to look at how we get the new approach, which we're calling the Conway conversation, how we get that embedded over the coming months. And it's going to very much focus on the idea of coaching. Coaching can be really useful for an individual, and we're looking at rolling out a training course from January 2022 to assist with that. So that very much is getting back up and running now as a task. All the details of the task have gone into CAMS, and Cheryl has very much now taken this forward after a pause because of the pandemic. Okay, next we have a task around safeguarding, and this is a more recent addition to the programme, and that was to make sure that in addition to all that we need as staff, both our volunteers and agency workers also are considered, and that we have all the details we need of those people, plus we know what the competencies and essential requirements are for both volunteers and agency workers. So it links closely to the other project, Positions Competencies, and we want to make sure, obviously, that volunteers who, fulfill really important roles, that we know all we need to know about them and their backgrounds, and obviously who their contacts are, emergency contacts, but also that they are equipped to do the jobs they need to do in terms of competencies. So we've been working with a number of services already. We've got a really comprehensive spreadsheet which details the different voluntary roles and also agency staff as well. So the current focus again is on leisure, because it's part of the implementation group. But all services have been contacted, and information has been coming back from those who oversee volunteers and also those who look after agency staff. Not all services have agency staff, but many services do have voluntary roles as well. So this is going well. Diana Burns from HR is now leading this task, and it's going to move forward, we hope, quite quickly over the next 6 months. Okay, and finally, another new addition to the programme is called Time to Change Wales. Now, this is a national initiative, and it's all about looking at how perhaps mental health there can be a stigma around talking about mental health. And this is all about undoing that, making it easier to talk about how you might be feeling and to put certain things in place, such as guidance, events, so that people can feel able to talk about mental health without feeling judged. And I think it's really paramount, isn't it, now, after everything we've all been through in the last 18 months, that this is in place. So this is led by Tracy Pardo from Corporate HR. It's been approved by the senior management team that we sign up to Time to Change Wales. So very soon we will have a signing of the pledge. It's called a pledge, to show that we as an organisation are committed to this. So once that's in place, we can roll this out further, and it's heading towards Time to Talk Day on the 3rd of Feb next year, which is a national day where it's very much paramount to feel that you can talk about how you are actually feeling at that point. So there'll be lots of publicity around this, lots of information, starting with an article in next month's staff brief. And we feel it's really timely, a really good piece of work, and quite well supported as well by Time to Change Wales itself, which is a Welsh government funded initiative. We're working with Wrexham, who have been rolling this out a little bit longer than us, but I feel it's a really positive step forward. We'll sign up champions from different services who can be the lead within that service, and we think it's a really positive piece of work, and Tracy's doing some good work around this. Okay, so that's a whistle stop really in terms of the 8 projects and tasks. There's much more detail obviously in the reports and in your appendices as well. But I think probably it would be best if, I know I've only got a relatively short slot today, if I ask Richard if there's anything he'd like to add.
Thank you very much, Gareth. I think, as you said there, so it's a whistle-stop tour, that is. There's a tremendous amount of detail in not only the documentation that Gareth has produced, and I've got to honestly say that the support that he's given to us has been tremendous as well from CIDT to drive this through. There is a lot of detail in there. I think we'll all hopefully see the vision, the strategic leadership that this is providing, the transparency and governance that it will give us. The areas it touches is every single service, every single member of staff, everyone we work with, the third sectors, all our contractors in that broad spectrum of what a contractor is as well. Those people that work for us, delivering our services with our money to make sure that we get exactly what we want back for them. It's delivering far-reaching improvements, and every time we start working through as well each of these groups, and particularly the implementation group, it touches other areas as well that we can improve as well while we're there, and bringing that governance together, and particularly a huge gains, as Gareth has said, within the education and social care and third sector over these months and the last couple of years there. But overall, it's really, really exciting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And at this point, I would like to just say a big thank you to Richard and team for their support, and also to Phil, our programme sponsor, who will be departing the authority soon. But a big thank you to Phil for all his support, and to Councillor Emma Leighton-Jones as our lead portfolio holder on this programme. So thank you to everybody. So we're happy to take questions at this point.
Diolch, Gareth.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Philip.
For that extensive, detailed report. And as somebody who's from a farming background, I know how important health and safety issues are. I have got Councillor Peter Lewis.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gareth, for really walking us through the report very methodically. I've just got a question, really, in terms of the PDR review task. Councillor Ronnie was most insistent when we had SPRs on the PDR figures and whatever. And he always maintained that a lot could be gained by PDRs in terms of people's various talents. But my question is, in terms of this review of the process, is there going to be a specific question to those undertaking that PDR on health and safety specifically?
Phil, that might be a good question for you, possibly.
Yes, it's still in the developmental phase at the moment, and Cheryl is still receiving suggestions and ideas as to what could be included. Bearing in mind, as was mentioned in the presentation, this isn't just a once or twice yearly event. This is a regular, up-to-date, in-time conversation. So I would be expecting not just conversations around health and safety specifically, but well-being conversations to take place too, as part of a broader remit in terms of the one-to-one discussions.
Happy, Peter?
Yeah.
Are you happy, Peter?
Yeah, just one thing in terms of, I think I'm probably stating the obvious, but I presume that outcomes you're looking for really is for Richard to report a reduction in incidents in the fullness of time.
Yeah, it's all part of the programme benefits, really. Yeah, it's about, a lot of it is about preventative measures, really, and making sure that it's a safe workplace, isn't it, Richard, for our staff?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Phil. Embedded in the PDR documentation at the moment are questions on whether people have had the correct training and health and safety expertise to their job. So I can hopefully see that moving forward as well. But as quite rightly said, it's about ensuring that the members of staff we have are whole people. So the whole genre around what makes someone competent and what someone makes someone confident to discharge their duties, to enable that we provide quality services to our as public services. We deliver the best quality services. So I think it's around ensuring that conversation hits every point of what we see as an ambassador of Conway would be, and how we'd want everyone to behave with, and how we'd want everyone to, we'd like to see them, as we interact with all our services. So I think I think a lot about it is anchoring to the premise of just doing the right thing.
Yeah, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, Peter.
I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chair, and look forward to a future report.
Diolch, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Frank Bradfield.
Bore da, Frank.
Good morning, Frank.
Bore da, Chair.
Good morning.
Can I thank Richard and Gareth for what is an excellent report. It gives the staff and hopefully people in Conway confidence in all the different aspects of health and safety. My question, Chair, is will they be dealing with individual cases, or will they just refer cases on to other organisations like, say, the Community Health Council or Betsy Cowalida? In the mental health, that is.
Right. Well, in terms of if you're referring to the Time to Change Wales task, I think that if anything arose, and Richard will back me up in this, that if there was anything arose that was an immediate concern around a member of staff, we probably couldn't ignore that, could we, Richard?
Absolutely not. No, and I think the phrase, I'm sure. I'm stealing Phil's comment here as well. Whilst the Welsh Government's agenda is time to change, that isn't particularly true for Conway. It's just, I think we're labelling this as we're going to do more of what we do already, and probably help to do it better. So there's a number of services that are available to us. There's a number of our providers as well, our occupational health providers and our counselling services that are available and have been for a number of years. I also know that from sitting on the education management briefings that every head teacher briefing goes out with the assets for mental health as well. So it's something that I think we're always doing, and those channels for helping people are available now. We're just hoping that this strengthens it and raises awareness. I see Phil's there, he can probably add more.
Yes, that's absolutely the case. We have well-established arrangements in terms of our health and well-being and absence management protocols. We've been supported by Care First in terms of our employee assistance program for a number of years. There is counselling available to staff, but this also recognises as well there may be times where some form of immediate clinical intervention might be required, and we are well averse as officers in terms of when we need to elevate and refer. So just to reiterate what both Richard and Gareth have said, this is our development of a Welsh Government initiative, but it is not decrying the fact we have well-established existing arrangements within Conway which work very well.
Diolch, Phil. Are you happy, Frank?
Yes, Chair. I'll be delighted to read in the publicity that they're going to issue how this is developing. I'm always looking for extra organisations or contacts to help people with disability or mental health, and I'm delighted to hear this report. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch, Frank. Cynghorydd Gronwy Edwards.
Councillor Gronwy Edwards. Good morning, Gronwy.
Sorry, I missed part of the report because I'm on a joint safety committee at the same time. So yes, my concern is about the people working from home, that we can properly monitor their health, because certainly people are working in different circumstances with being in the home environment. They will face different challenges, including the working environment that they're in. And I'm aware, I've just come off this other meeting, as I said, that a lot of people having to take decisions at home now on heating their properties, and there are all sorts of scams going out there. And I think a lot of people are thinking, I'm working from home, I need to make my home environment more comfortable. So I think we need to make sure that we give them the support when they're making decisions on going forward on how we support them, because I think a lot of people are having to make decisions at home on their own, as I said, because we're working from home. I think it's important we capture that, that we make sure there are support mechanisms for them in this period. So that's all I've got to say. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr, Cynghorydd Gronwy.
Thank you, Councillor Gronwy. Nobody else has their hands up. I've got a proposer that we accept this report. Have we got a seconder, please?
Anybody willing to second Councillor Peters' proposal?
Councillor Dave Rees has his hand
Dave
up.
Rees, thank you. David? Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to second Councillor Peters' proposal that we note the progress made by the Corporate Health and Safety Programme. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr. Can I have...
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Pawb yn hapus? Lovely.
Happy. Lovely, thank you. I can note then that has been noted.
Right. Can I thank Gareth, Richard and Phil for their presentation this morning.
Okay.
Real thanks to all the staff involved with the report. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Right. Item 10A.
Item 10A, Capital Programme 2021-2022, Quarter 2 Monitoring Reports. This is presented by Sandra Forrest, pages 112 to 137. Good morning, Sandra.
Good morning, bore da pawb. I'm Sandra Forrest, Head of Accountancy and Exchequer, and I'm going to be presenting the Capital Programme Quarter 2 Monitoring Report for 21-22. So if I can just share my screen, I have a brief slideshow. So there we are. Okay, so the purpose of the report then is to report on the reprofiled capital programme for 21-22. Within this report then we're requesting approval to carry forward funding for schemes from 21-22 to future years totalling 24.943 million. And we're also requesting approval for new schemes to the 21-22 programme totalling 6.919 million. So the previous programme approved, so this is what is approved to date then. So we started off in March then, at the start of the year, we approved new schemes of 24.928 million, which included additional schemes for the Children's Residential Assessment Centre, Bronnan and the Schools Maintenance Grant. And then as part of the quarter monitoring report then, we approved a carry forward of 22.481 million from the previous year from 2021. And then in the quarter one report then, we also approved 17.623 million of new schemes, which are mostly grant funded. And then in the previous year, we'd also approved 16.47 million of funding to be carried forward from the previous year. So all in all, the table then looks like that. So the total programme approved at this stage was 91.233 million. And this was then estimated completion then. So we estimated of that money, 66.613 million would come in 21-22, and then 24.62 million would be carried forward to 22-23. And then the top of the table then shows you how that 91.233 million was funded. So a lot of that was through unsupported borrowing. So this is a lot of these infrastructure schemes which we fund through unsupported borrowing. So the revised capital programme, so this is what we're asking you to approve then, is 94.867 million. So we're starting off with our 91.233. We've revised some schemes, or there's been changes to funding. So we're taking out 3.285. Then we have 6.919 new schemes. So that brings the programme now to 94.867 million. And we are estimated now that 45.667 will complete in 21-22. And then in subsequent to 23 and subsequent years will be 49.2. So we have initially then we expected 66.613 million would complete in year. We're asking to carry forward of that now 24.943 million. So these are the, again, as we've mentioned previously, these are these large infrastructure schemes which will go over a number of years, or we've had difficulty maybe getting the contractors. So some of the schemes haven't yet started. So we're asking to move those forward into next year and maybe even beyond that. A large proportion of these reprofiled schemes then are through borrowing, so through unsupported borrowing. So this does mean that because they're through unsupported borrowing, then the hit on the revenue budget then it won't be needed until 23-24, and then maybe in the meantime there might be grants available to cover this expenditure. So if you look on Appendix 1 then, the key reference A, so against each scheme where you've got an A, then this is where we're asking that scheme to be carried forward to the next year and subsequent years. We've also got changes to funding then. So some of the schemes are no longer progressing, or the funding needs to be applied for in the next year, or we did have ones where the funding was included in error. So that's now taken out. This amounts to 3.285, so we're taking that out of the programme. And then if you look at Appendix 1, then all the schemes with B next to them are the ones that have been removed from the programme. We've also been had additional funding. It's been identified for a number of schemes in the year, and these include some childcare, transforming towns, coastal defence, play opportunities, and this amounts to 6.919 million. And Appendix 1, you can see that the key reference against each scheme is a C or a D. So this is for new funded schemes, which are mostly through new grants that we've been awarded. Not sure what's happened. Sorry. Okay, so this is the revised programme then for 21-22. So it was 66.613. We've brought back in 363,000 that was carried forward, but now we know it's going to complete in year. We're then taking out of that 24.943 million to subsequent years. We're taking out 3.285 million for revised schemes, and then we've got 6.919 million of new schemes. So the revised programme for 21-22 is now 45.667 million. So the recommendations of the report then are to approve the 24.943 million carry forward to from 21-22 to future years, and approve the funding for new schemes of 6.919 million. Note the funding that's no longer required of 3.285, and then approve the total capital programme of 94.867. And that completes the report. If anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them.
Diolch yn fawr, Sandra. Very
Sandra.
as always, and precise. Right, I've got Councilor Andrew Wood.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Very interesting. Bang on as usual. Just got a couple of questions. Obviously, there's a 3.5 million extra in grants, which you've alluded to before, which is great news. And the great news, of course, are using our capital reserves. We've only had to put over 131,000 to them. Just a very brief question. What is our reserves after this now?
For the capital reserves, I'm not sure, but maybe Hugh can answer that one.
Yeah, I'd like to know, because obviously you've got some more grants. that means we use less reserves, hopefully. And yeah, please.
Okay. I might have to come back to you on that one. Yeah. Okay.
That's the resource committee to what the reserves we.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that one.
Oh, okay, thank you, Sandra. Whilst we're waiting for Sandra to come back, Councilor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Sandra. There's a few things going on in my mind, and I remember about 3 years ago, our previous finance director, Andrew Kirkham, said that, you know, with the reductions of funding from government, we need to look at what grants are available and how we can use those grants to allow us to develop or improve our county for our residents. And I've been looking at this report, and I see the figure of 6.919 million being rolled forward for future projects. But I'm mindful of the fact that you know, we have a very generous offer on the table from Welsh Government for coastal defence and improvements, and I don't think we're capitalising on that offer as good as we could be, and that is of concern to me. Our corporate priorities are that our residents feel safe and also that they're listened to, and also our values are that we're fair to all. But I've been questioning the leader recently about the schemes for the coastal defence and enhancement throughout the county, and I feel that they are less fair to some communities, and that those communities are not being listened to, and as such will feel less safe, you might say. So whilst I welcome the report, I'm a little bit concerned about only having 6.91 million for future projects. So I would like to add to it a proposal that we ask the Cabinet to urgently review all coastal defence projects to make sure that as a county we are capitalising or getting the most from this very generous funding from Welsh Government, which I think is 85% for coastal defence and enhancements. So I would like that to be added to the proposal, because I think we're in danger of not capitalising on this grant. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I just reply to that?
You can, yeah. Sandra, by all means.
Okay, so the CRUMP project, so the Coastal Defence Project, then we have agreed with Welsh Government for I think it's just over £50 million, the total project. So some of those schemes are not in the programme yet. So that is where we've agreed to roll ahead with these projects, for which we're receiving 85% of the funding. And I know that the team are putting these schemes together to get them off the ground, basically. So they will come into the programme at a later date, but they're not all in the programme as yet. So we have accepted the funding from Welsh Government to move with these larger projects for coastal defence.
You want to come back, Nigel?
Well, I just wonder whether that's for some of the projects or for all of the projects, because I haven't got a clue, neither have any of my colleagues in Tower and Kimmel Bay, exactly what the scheme will involve or what it will be. I mean, we've been talking about it for, I don't know, 18 months or so. I'm trying to squeeze out of the officers exactly what is on the table. They know exactly what we would like to see, but it's as clear as mud at the moment.
Okay.
Okay. Charlie McCoobie, the leader.
Diolch, Gareth. You will have received an email this morning, Nigel. The proposals are coming to members next week for Llandolis and Kimnel Bay for discussion. So yeah, it's imminent, essentially.
If I could, so
yes.
if these projects come forward and they're a little bit more enhanced than officers thought, will the 6.91 million be enough? That's my.
Is there anybody who can answer that question? Sandra? Or...
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
It'll have to go back to the project manager for this scheme.
Okay. Have you heard from Hugh to answer Councillor Wood's question?
I haven't as yet.
Okay, fine.
I haven't got that figure to hand. We'll have to provide it later if that's okay, please.
Okay. Are you happy for them to do that, Andrew?
Or keep wasting chat. No, I would have thought somebody to have the reserve figure to hand. I would have thought Amanda or somebody else would have had it, but you know, it's not a crucial figure. It's just what we got left in the bank, innit, really? So let's not worry about it, eh?
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
Could I therefore ask either Hugh or Sandra, when you find out the figure, if you could email it to the members of this committee? Would you be happy with that, Andrew? Andrew, he's gone.
Yeah, so that's right. Dog's in the room. That's why I wanted to mute. So yes, right. I'm happy. Thank you.
So can you do that, Sandra?
I will do. Yes.
Okay, lovely. Diolch yn fawr. I have got nobody else with a hand up. So I take it, Nigel, you still want to stick to your proposal?
Well, I think it's imperative that we get the Cabinet to look and make sure that we're making the most out of this very generous Welsh Government funding for all our coastal communities, our residents, and more particularly our visitors, who are our biggest input into our economy. So I think it's imperative that we do what we can at this time.
Okay. Do I therefore have a seconder for Councillor Nigel's proposal? Councillor Jeff Corrie.
Thank you, Chair. I know what Nigel's saying. It's been a hard push for this end of the county with the coastal defence, and we've really had to sort of strengthen our concerns. Now, I do note an email this morning which the leader has referred to, and hopefully we can take it further forward. But I do feel the Cabinet needs to consider what Nigel's pointed out there, that we really want to assure our community of a future which is under serious threat, I think, more than anywhere in Conway. And we push, for instance, the Clwyd Bank, the West Bank of the Clwyd, which, if that bank fails or overflows, there's over 5,000 properties at risk, right up to the edge of Abergele. So we can just note what Nigel is saying there and ask the Cabinet to sort of focus on our concerns, which after next week's meeting that the leaders referred to might well come out a little bit more. So I would second that proposal. Thank you.
Sorry, Jeff, I missed the last bit. Are you willing to? Are you seconding Nigel's proposal then?
I hope that my concerns are being noted. Not just coastal defence, but the River Clwyd as well.
Yeah,
and we might fix the coastal defence to some degree, but our back door is still ajar.
So are you seconding Nigel?
I am.
Yes,
but added that the whole of the flood issue is recognised, more in depth. Thank you.
Okay, Nigel, are you happy to accept Jeff's proposal or amendment?
I think the problem may be that the crump schemes are only for coastal defence and not for river defences. But I think it's imperative really that we get the most from this funding. That's the point. Is to get everything we can whilst this funding is in place from Welsh Government. Okay. It's no good just doing a little bit and then thinking, oh, I wish we'd done this as well, because now we've got to fund it ourselves. While the funding's there, we should go for the best schemes for our coastal communities that will enhance and secure the coastal areas, for our residents and our tourists. That's my point. Ewan Davis, Chief Exec.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering whether Nigel and Jeff, whether it might be better to have the meeting next week and see what information is shared there before setting off potentially a whole review of coastal protection works by Cabinet, which has seemed to. I didn't quite catch all of what your proposal was, Nigel, but for the sake of a few days, I just wonder whether it might be better use of everybody's time to have that meeting so you better understand what the proposals are for the east of the county. Just a suggestion, but obviously up to the committee as to what they want to do.
Yeah, well, my proposal was not just about the east of the county, it's about the whole of our coastal areas, and to make sure that we get the most from this funding. That's the whole point of it, is that the Cabinet sit down and are satisfied that the schemes that we're putting forward are the best schemes. If I want to talk about Llandudno, economy in place, we approved as a committee there, sand and groins for Llandudno, because it will protect that area, that community, but it will enhance the promenade area for our tourists and give a far better recreational area to keep people fit and active. And that's the type of scheme that I would like to see across the whole of our coastal communities, something that enhances and enriches the area for tourism and our residents. I mean, at the end of the day, Yuan, tourism is our biggest earner. And if there's an opportunity here to get 85% to any enhancements on our promenade or coastal areas that will improve our tourist offering, then we should be looking at that, not just shoring up the front and putting a concrete wall there, which doesn't do anything for tourism. So we've got to get that balance right. And I'm not sure that we are, to be honest. I have grave concerns. And tourism is something that we need to really, really protect.
Okay, diolch, Nigel. All right then. We've got a proposal by Nigel Smith, seconded by Jeff Corey. Is there anybody who wants to propose that we accept the argymhellion as they stand, the recommendations as they stand in the report? No. Okay then. Councillor Peter Lewis.
Well, I'd like to propose the recommendations as they stand, Chair.
Thank you, Peter Lewis. Is there a seconder? Councillor Underwood, I can see you waving your hand.
I'll second it, but I'll just mention to Nigel, if you read the email, there's ample opportunity with what our Chief Executive just said to get into there. But I will support you what you said, Nigel, but we don't need to do it. Let's go to next week and then pull it back from there and see what's happening, yeah?
So are you willing to second Councillor Peter Lewis's proposal? Okay.
Yeah, let's carry on. Yeah.
Thank you. We therefore have two proposals. I shall now, can you just ratify your proposal, your new proposal, Nigel?
Yeah, so my proposal was that the Cabinet urgently review all coastal defence projects to make sure that we're making the most or capitalising the most from the generous Welsh Government funding offer of 85%. And I think, you know, when we're talking about rolling over 6.91 million for future projects, that may not be enough. And that's a concern. So, you know, if you want somebody to balance the books, then we may need to increase that figure. And I think if they can review the projects to see if they are the best, you know, in the way of tourism and amenity, then, you know, they could look at Llandudno and say, yeah, that's fine, that. They might look at Llandulus and say, well, do you know what? We could do better here. Who knows? But it's the whole of the coast, from Llanfyfychan right the way down to Kimmel Bay. I think that's all I'm suggesting.
Okay, then I shall pass this over now to Sally for the vote.
Yeah, so if we take Councillor Nigel's proposal first, so we're just voting on this one now, and then we'll take the recommendations from in the report as a separate vote. So Councillor Phil Capper.
I'm going to have to abstain, Sally. I've been keep dropping out of the meeting and not heard it all.
Okay, no problem at all. Councillor Jeff Corry.
Oh.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
Against.
Councillor Chris Hughes.
Obliged.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
Against.
Councillor Austin Roberts. Councillor John Roberts.
Like.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
Against.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
Against would support it at a later date if need be.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne.
O blaid.
Okay, let me just tally up those numbers. Okay, so we have 6 for and we have 6 against and we have 1 abstention. Therefore, I need to go to the chair.
I voted against, so I can't change my mind. Therefore, that's 7 for, 6 against, yeah? Dyna fo felly, mae'r cynnig yna wedi'w fethu.
Then that has failed to be passed. Go to the recommendation of the reports.
Yeah, so this is to recommend the recommendations from within the report to Cabinet. So Councillor Phil Capper.
Yes, again, I'll abstain on it because I keep dropping out of the meeting.
Okay, Councillor Jeff Corrie.
I'll go for now. Thank you.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
For.
Councillor Chris Hughes.
Obliged.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor John Roberts.
Obliged one.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
For this time.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
Oh.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
For, thank you.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne.
Obliged.
Yeah, that's unanimous, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr, mi fydda i gadarnhau chi bod
Thank you. I can confirm that recommendation has always gone forward to the Cabinet. Right, then moving on to item 10B, assessment of the budgetary position 21-22, Amanda Hughes to present pages 138 to 150. Good morning, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Chair. Right, I'd like to present this report to you, but just for the record and the recording, my name is Amanda Hughes and I'm the Strategic Director of Finance and Resources. So this report effectively is giving the committee the latest assessment of the budgetary position for the current financial year. You'll recall when I presented the previous assessment to you in September that at that point in time I was reporting a pressure of 1.275 million. This report obviously has been prepared sort of a couple of months further on, reflecting the half year position of the council, and that position now has worsened a little bit to the extent that I'm now anticipating a potential overspend of 1.65 million. But just to run through some specific updates, I think that are hopefully of use and of interest to the committee since that last time. So in particular, I want to focus on a couple of things. So the pay award as one particular thing. So in terms of the pay award, since the last report, the teachers' pay award has now been settled and effected from September 2021, and that was agreed at 1.75%. The cost to schools as a result of that, or schools and the council, there's a little bit of teaching staff not in schools, is approximately 550,000. Welsh Government have provided some additional funding to go towards that. In paragraph 3.8 of the report, I suggest that our share is in the region of about 200,000. Since I wrote this report, that has now actually been confirmed, and actually our specific share is 218,000, so marginally better than I anticipated. That does, however, leave a shortfall of around 350,000. Now, Welsh Government are asserting that they provided an element of monies within the settlement last year. That doesn't accord with my understanding or our understanding, but that's their assertion. But on the basis that effectively schools through through the allocations of the budget approvals last year effectively weren't subject to any form of reductions, unlike other services. I am recommending to the committee that the shortfall in this year of that 338,000 it'll actually be in the end, that shortfall of 338,000 falls onto the schools budgets or balances. Obviously the intention would be to build that fully into the base in terms of the 22-23 budget, but for that shortfall specifically to fall on the schools at this point in time in year, and that forms one of the recommendations of the report. Further, moving on then to non-teaching staff, a final offer of 1.75% has also been made to non-teaching staff. That has been unanimously rejected by the 3 trade unions, and in fact those trade unions are now in the process of preparing to conduct industrial action ballots into the new year. So time will tell in terms of the outcome of that. Now, in terms of the funding of the 1.75%, you'll recall that when the Chancellor effectively suggested a pay pause for this year, that was with the caveat that anyone on low income, so earning less than 24,000, would receive some pay award. And so in terms of the budget provision that was made in the 21-22 budget, when you set the budget last March, effectively there was a budget provision for that element for the £24,000, sorry, for those less than £24,000. If now there's a blanket 1.75% increase across everybody, that will now cost, in addition to the provision already set aside in the budget, another 580,000. There is, however, an earmarked reserve, which is one-off money, which has been set aside to fund any additional uplift. And of that, that's 898,000 in the reserve. So 580,000 would still leave some headroom. And effectively, if the pay award was settled at no more than 2.1%, then the underlying budget plus the one-off money would be able to fund that in the 21-22 budget. However, the element that's funded from earmarked reserve, whatever that element is a pressure into the next year's budget. Moving on, then just to mention a couple of specific sort of activity service pressures or whatever. So the council tax reduction scheme is currently looking like it will now be overspent by around 276,000. We were also overspent last year by I think around 500,000, but Welsh Government provided some additional support separate to the hardship monies, but through the various hardship schemes. It's unclear this year whether or not we will receive any support for that overspend this year. So at the moment I'm anticipating not and reporting it to you as an overspend, in a predicted overspend. And in terms of the other services, I outlined last time some service pressures around housing and around education and social care. The position on most of those has remained fairly static. However, the forecast position for social care has now worsened a little bit again as well. What I would, however, observe is that, again, since I prepared the report for you today, social care we have been as a council awarded additional social care recovery monies in year for the current year, and I am hoping that perhaps some of that overspend position that I'm currently reporting to you may actually be able to be covered through some of that money. So I'm hoping, in fact, it might be an improving position when I come to report to you next time. But in overall terms, effectively, based on the position at the moment, the recommendations in the report are effectively to approve, subject to the outturn position, the use of earmarked reserves to fund the pressures outlined, so the 1.275 million that I outlined last time, and the additional 376,000 this time, and also then to confirm that you're happy that the shortfall in Welsh Government funding for the in-year cost only, so the next year's will be sorted, but the in-year cost only will fall onto the schools' budgets or balances. Thank you very much, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Diolch yn fawr, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Presentation. I don't have anybody's hand up at the moment. Is that? Yes, Councilor Wood. Andrew.
Sorry about that. Must be an easier way to get myself off mute. Hey, somebody technically needs to tell me that bit. Amanda, thank you very much. Hardship funding, this one might be going for Charlie. It's just a table. It doesn't seem to work out. Where what we've claimed and what we've received leaves us short of 2.5 million. But we've got 944,000, which is nearly a million, in abeyance, on hold. And then there's a further 844,000, which is not shown on the table, which is in paragraph 3.4. If you take that away from the money that's left, it leaves us 1.5 million. Take us away from the stuff on hold, 727,000, minus the stuff that we don't think we're going to get back, 160,000, leaves us 500,000 short. Now, presumably, this is money that's in transition somewhere, but I can't see any mention to it in the table or in the reading. I've read it all, and I can't see anything else in there. But maybe it is, Charlie. Maybe there is some grants out there not being paid, or there's something not shown properly. I don't know. Just enlighten me, please, somebody.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just in terms of so you're referring to Table 2 in the report, which is reflecting the hardship monies that we've claimed in the current financial year. So effectively, you're absolutely correct that at this point in time, 944,000 of the monies we've claimed are currently on hold and yet to be received. Having said that, I haven't reflected that in the table in terms of the overall shortfall, because I am of the view that we will receive that money. And the reason it's on hold is just because of specific processes that Welsh Government are going through to look at the money. And most of the money that's on hold is actually to do with free school meals and a little bit of it to do with social care. So whilst it is on hold at this moment, I have every confidence that it will be received, and that's why I haven't therefore included it in the projected overall shortfall. In terms of and the other bit, just to clarify on that table, so you'll see that the 21-22 Q2 income of 1,026,000, that's not been received, rejected or held at the moment. The reason for that is because at the time this report was prepared, we'd literally submitted that claim 2 days before. But again, you'll see from Q1 that actually we are largely successful in receiving all of the income through the hardship claims.
Okay, can I just come back? Can we come back on that? Just two seconds. Okay, you mentioned 944,000, which is on hold in claims relating to 2021-2022 this year, retrospectively. But if you look back to April 21 and 20, well, that explains that. But the other one is 884,000, which is still in hold in relation to 2020-2021, last financial year. So yeah. I can't see any relation to that, but I can see where it's not counting the figures. So you got a difference, 2.5 million. Add those two together, you're getting somewhere near it. But you're still 567,000 or over 500,000 short.
Yeah, I don't quite follow your figures there, but just to explain the 844,000. So the 844,000 there is 844,000 still on hold in relation to the 2021 financial year. I haven't reflected that in the table because what I've reflected in the table is the 21-22 activity. The amounts we claimed for hardship monies in 2021 were reported in previous year in last year's table. However, again, of the 844,000 that is still on hold from 2021, we are in discussions with Welsh Government. Again, the bulk of that money is free school meals. and the other element of it is social care. Now Welsh Government are challenging an element of the claim, which is social care, a social care element of the claim, and we believe the risk around that non-receipt is that £160,000 that I referred to in the final sentence there, and I do believe that is a risk. So to that extent, I'm perhaps slightly remiss in not including it as an overall pressure, because that could well be a pressure, but I haven't included it at the moment because I am in discussions with Welsh Government, and I am still hopeful that we will be able to prove our case to Welsh Government that that was legitimate spend. But I believe the element at risk is that £160,000. The £500,000 that you're referring to, I don't quite understand where you're picking that figure up from to be able to explain it.
Well, basically, that's a figure from your 5.9 million minus the income you received, although you've not got anything from September 21. That leaves you 2.5 million, minus your 944, which is outstanding, minus your 844 outstanding. That brings you down to 727,000, and you've got 160, which you reckon is at risk. So it leaves an amount of 567, which I presume is the amount you're trying to claim for September, but I don't know, it's not on here. And the other thing I mentioned is that there should be some sort of reference to, or there may be for another table, different graph or whatever, the HMRC furlough payments. We did do some successful furlough payments up to September this year, I would have presumed. But where does that factor in? Because I know that the Welsh Government wanted that money back. Whatever we claim, we wanted it back. So I can't see that as it will have an impact on the budget. Or budget response, anyway.
Specifically in relation to furlough, well, first off, all furlough payments have now stopped. We don't have anyone on furlough anymore. In terms of those costs, I must confess I don't absolutely know the position, but I'm assuming we claim those through the hardship monies. Hugh, if he's on the line, might be able to confirm that. But just to sort of go back in overall terms, so the 844 is a separate figure altogether from anything shown in table 2. So what I'm saying is that there's 884,000 not shown in table 2, which relates to the previous year, and I believe 160,000 of it may be at risk, but we're in active discussions with Welsh Government about that. In terms of 2021-22 claims, all of that is shown in table 2, and because of the timing of when I prepared the report compared to the submission of those claims, both the September expenditure claim and the quarter 2 income claim had literally just been submitted at the time. So we haven't yet, or we hadn't at that point in time, received any of those monies. But I am absolutely pretty confident that we will receive all of those funds in line with what we've received up until now, because you can actually see on the pattern of expenditure that very little of our claims are actually rejected. The amounts on hold are not because they're not valid expenditure, but because of the processing and scrutiny arrangements that Welsh Government have under place, and effectively that's the position across all Welsh local authorities. So it isn't that they've got our free school meals on hold, they've got all local authorities free school meals on hold, because that's the process that they have underway. So in terms of the monies for 21-22, I'm confident that we will be receiving those funds and that there is no risk of loss. The only risk of loss that I am flagging is the fact that of the 884,000 from the previous year, about 160,000 of it is at risk. But as I say, we're actively discussing that with local authorities. Hugh, I don't know if you are there in terms of being able to just clarify the point about furlough.
Amanda, I can clarify the point about furlough. Yeah. Okay. So in total then, for the whole from April last year right through to September, we claimed 2.3 million in furlough payments, and those furlough payments are allocated direct to services where we had staff on furlough. So that income then was given to that service, and how that flowed through then was that we didn't claim loss of income. So basically, we reduced our claim to Welsh Government because the services were given that furlough money. So that's how the furloughs worked.
So where have you reduced the claim? In the actual you're not in the hardship funding, surely? No.
The loss of income claim. So where we had a loss of income claim, so say for Venue Cymru, because we were claiming furlough money for Venue Cymru staff, we offset the furlough money against the loss of income claim. So we weren't kind of double counting. Okay. So overall, the budget would be the same.
Okay, yeah, I understand the double count. So interesting enough, Amanda. So September 21 expenditure, we should see a figure in there of 1.5 million minus maybe the 160 at risk, and that then, you know, obviously if Welsh Government want to hold any of that, so we need to see what's happening with that, and of course 844,000 from the year before, so we may need to bring that table back somewhere along to satisfy members that it's actually all been paid out and sorted. Thank you.
We've had notification for the 1.5 million for September that we're going to receive 1.3 million of it already, so that 1.3 is safe. And there's about 200k that they just, as Amanda would say, they're sort of still processing it. And while I'm speaking, can I also say I've checked the ledger for the capital reserve, and the figure is 1.2 million.
Capital reserve, yeah. What's the general reserve while you're at it?
I've only looked at the capital reserve. The general reserves, yeah, I only do the capital bit really for that. Sorry.
Okay. So that's enough to carry that. All right, I shall dip out there. So. Thank you very much for that, Hugh. So we have got the money, so it should go into the project in September 21. Yeah, thank you. So we're only short of the 844,000 from 2020 to 2021 now. Yeah.
Yeah, and most of that is safe because it's a lot of it is free school meal payments that they are still processing, looking at, but they've kind of confirmed that it will come through eventually. It's not at risk, that bit.
Okay, thank you.
Diolch, Hugh.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Amanda, for the report. I've read the report a couple of times, and there's a couple of areas that are sort of sticking points for me that some I'm just not clear about, and the others I sort of question what we're recommending. The bit I'm not clear about is about our earmarked budget reserves, Amanda. We're seeing in the report that we've got now a projected overspend of 1.65 million. And obviously the purpose of this report is to look at how do we address that. And your table is talking about on page 140 in terms of addressing, is it 1.275 million of the shortfall with earmarked reserves. And leaving it at that. It would appear also from that table that we seem to have remaining after we've done that £1 million of earmarked reserves, as well as the 318,000 that would be from what the current projected cost of the pay award for non-teaching staff. So my sort of questions that follow now are around the context of it. Would appear that we've got potentially, and obviously it's not clear because there's no report, no detailed table in the report about where we are with our budgeted earmarked reserves as to what we're doing or proposing to do with schools. You know, we're 9 months now, more or less, into the school's year. And here we are playing a left ball with 3 months to go, in essence, of this financial year. And we're expecting schools to accommodate in excess of £500,000 cost against a 3 years residual budget, what's left unspent within this year. I'm not sure about the morality of that. I mean, obviously, I understand that you haven't budgeted for it and therefore it needs to be addressed somewhere. But with 3 months of the year left, and given where schools are, I know you think that it's okay to ask them to fund this themselves because you didn't ask them to have, or we didn't ask them to make any service reductions. But obviously, in real terms, their budgets have just gone down and down and down. And we know there's a major issue in our schools in terms of catch up We know there's a perfect storm with ALN, with the new curriculum, as well as sort of catching up. So, you know, where schools are, I would suggest they're not in a position, unless I'm way out of touch, to necessarily to be able to accommodate such a left field additional cost. I mean, I don't know what the view of the Cabinet Member for Education is, because there's no comments from her within the report. I presume she's been consulted. I'm not sure what the view of our head of education is, again, because there's no comments within the report. And more importantly of all, I'm not sure what the feedback is from our school heads are, because again, there's nothing within the report. I mean, I'm sure many of us who are school governors know that any reserves that we've got are very much targeted usually to substantive sort of positions, and therefore overspends will wipe out staffing levels for next year. And I may well, you know, incur sort of overspends in this year. So, you know, the prudence of this, the wisdoms of this, and the appropriateness is a question for me and a concern for me, particularly in the back of, it would appear, if I ever interpreted your report correctly, that there's still remaining earmarked reserves for the budget. So if I stop there, that's my sort of summary question so far.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anne. Yeah, well, just to clarify, in and of the first instance, the shortfall that I am, or that potentially, subject to the democratic decision, the cost that will fall on the school is the difference between the 550 and the 218,000 that Welsh Government are now providing us some additional grant funding. So it's 338,000. In terms of where that's funded, I mean, obviously, you know, that is a decision for members to take in terms of whether that falls onto the general council balances or whether that falls onto the school balances. I guess the context I would make, which is in 3.9, paragraph 3.9, is that, as I say, when you set the budget for the current year, the delegated school budgets were protected, unlike other services, and therefore, to some extent, I guess the point I'm trying to make there is to the extent that Welsh Government assert that it was included in the settlement, then effectively, proportionately, the schools had a greater share of that settlement because they had to take less budget reductions than anyone else. In terms, but nonetheless, you know, it is a decision for you as members to decide whether you want to fund that through the general balances, or whether you want to fund that, or whether there's an expectation that schools pick that up. To the extent, in terms of schools' views and head teachers' views, you know, clearly I've engaged with them through the school budget forum, and clearly their view is that funding should be provided, and I have alluded to that in the first paragraph, first sentence of paragraph 3.9, and I guess perhaps you know, what I would acknowledge, I haven't mentioned in the report, in fairness, what the school balances are, but just to give you that figure. So the school balances at the end of March last year, so carrying into this year, is 5.9 million. The balances that we have in terms of the council balances to support the rest of the budget is 1.467 million as a budget recovery plan, and an additional 435 as budget reductions, and that pay award one that I've supported, that I've referred to as 898. So ultimately, if the pay award did, you know, if members took the decision to fund the teachers' pay award from the reserves that that are held to support the general council budgets, then effectively it would just reduce those amounts down further, whilst maintaining the school's budgets, school balances at 5.9 million. So ultimately, it is a decision for you as members. But the reason I hope I've made it clear why I personally believe, the school should be asked to pick that cost up.
So what is the Cabinet Member for Education's view in terms of the affordability of this and indeed the impact on our schools? I mean, obviously some of our schools are very small. Perhaps it may well be that, you know, secondary schools with maybe bigger reserves and some of which are not earmarked, but obviously you're giving a big figure, which is easy to quote, but obviously there's no detail around how that's been earmarked and indeed potentially planned to be spent. So I'm just really concerned that, you know, again, based upon the information that we've got, that schools look like an easy hit. Is what it looks like to me. And obviously they're not particularly, I don't have any representation here from either, you know, the strategic director or indeed from the heads in terms of their written feedback to us as members. Or indeed the Cabinet Member, and that's why I'm sort of struggling really. If they're all saying, yeah, no problem, we can take the hit from this, we can play our part, but that's not the sort of sense that I have from my own involvement with the school, and this would be potentially wiping out teaching positions going forward, and that really concerns me. So, you know, that's where I come from. So I think, you know, just sort of listening to you, I mean, I'm still not particularly clear if we've got unused earmarked budget reserves. I think you're saying that we have. So, you know, for members, I don't know if there's any support for this concern that I've got, you know, as I say, 9 months into a 12 months budgetary year with only 3 months left. So most spending is gone and most planning has been done for the following year. I think it's unreasonable, really. I think it's unrealistic, and I think it's certainly unfair to expect schools to fund this unplanned cost from scarce resources. So, you know, what I would actually like members is just to propose that we remove recommendation 4 in this report, which is at 1.4 on page 139. And recommend instead that the unbudgeted teacher pay rise of, well, now it's not 550 anymore, it's going to be 338 according to Amanda, be met within remaining earmarked budget reserves or general reserves, depending upon the reality of what those figures currently are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anne McCaffrey. Councillor Charles McCoubry and then Councillor Chris Hughes.
Thanks, Chair. We work really, really closely with schools. I'm a governor at 2 schools. I've got 2 children in local high schools. And members will remember that last year's council tax figure of 2.95, that all was for the schools. And there were many members felt they couldn't support that figure last year because it was too high and an unfair burden on our council taxpayers. School balances have improved dramatically from before, but clearly some schools will find this impact more than others. But that's the simple thing we have to judge here. Are we going to go for a higher council tax figure when last year people wouldn't support 2.95? How's this going to be paid for? You know, that's it. Is it our council tax residents, or do the schools have to find some of that savings? I was certainly clear in the 2 governing bodies I'm on that whilst last year we did everything we could to support them, there was no guarantee that would happen in the future. Unfortunately, both the schools I'm involved in have been quite prudent and have put some money aside for these unexpected pressures. But these are the difficult decisions we have to make. Clearly, I'd like to be going to schools and giving them more money. We're all aware of the pressures that they're under, but it has to be paid for. And I am supportive of the proposal, Amanda, for that reason. So thanks, Chair.
I mean, I think, can I just come back, Chair? I mean,
yeah, quickly, Anne, because I've got Chris
that's absolutely fine. I mean, none of us want to burden schools, and I get that. And, you know, I'm the chair of governors of a school, and, you know, there's 160 odd kids there, and I'm completely conscious of the impact on them and in the teaching teams. But I think really, I mean, I really would not like us to see conflating 2 issues here, which is what I think Charlie has just done, which is council tax, or, you know, schools taking a £338,000 hit 9 months into the year. I really think that muddies the clarity of what we need to decide here, and distracts from this conversation. The council tax is a separate issue which patently needs to be addressed. We're not in a position to address the detail of that in any shape or form with the limited information that we've got so far. and therefore I just reiterate the proposal that I put on the table. I think this is, schools are just too easy a target in these terrible times for schools. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Chrysos.
Thanks, Chair. Like Anne, I was really concerned when I read that the hit that education were getting. Like Charlie, I have a child in high school, but I'm also a governor of an infant school. But I know the concerns that they've already been raised by schools with members, and there are concerns. And I agree with Anne. This isn't about schools or council tax. The council tax is for the council to determine and the cabinet to recommend on. This is for us as a scrutiny committee to determine whether or not we agree with the cuts to education. So I'm more than happy to second Anne's proposal on the basis of the information we have in front of us today.
Diolch, Chris. I'm going to bring in Iwan Davies, the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder, again, tying up to members of the Scrutiny Committee, I wonder if rather than rejecting recommendation for entirely, whether you would recommend to Cabinet, because this report will go to Cabinet next, recommend to Cabinet that in considering that particular recommendation 2.4, they do have specific information in front of them about the school balances, individual school balances, so they can understand that overall context, see where that £5.9 million balances figure is sitting, and also some particular specific information about our general balances and reserves, because as many of you have pressed quite rightly in recent times, we need to be really conscious of the council's financial sustainability. And one of the measures of that is the level of general reserves and balances, which has been notoriously and for a long time low at Conway and has been picked up by auditors. We've been trying over the last year or so to make inroads into increasing those general balances, and we've been somewhat successful. But I think it's so therefore I think it's important you see that figure, that and the context of that next to what this might mean for our schools. And just for the record, of course, we'd all like to give extra money for our schools and all our services, but we're all in a difficult position. This is a case of trying to make the best use of money that's available within the whole system. So that would be my suggestion. Obviously, Councillor Anne doesn't need to take that as an alteration to the proposal, but I think that rather than throwing out 2.4 altogether, that would give go some way to, I think, alleviating concerns about what the impact might be. At least then Cabinet would have that in front of them. Diolch, Cadeirydd.
Can I come back, Chair?
Yes, of course, Anne.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, thanks for that intervention, Ewan. I think it's quite helpful. I think what I'd actually like to suggest, as a sort of a way forward, is that the very information that you're suggesting is made available to Cabinet should be what's made available to Scrutiny, because in some respects I think it'd be a complete dereliction of duty if we were just to completely abdicate scrutinising this significant proposal, which is 2.4. So I'm more than happy for us to defer consideration of what our scrutiny recommendation is to Cabinet, but just to short circuit scrutiny in this significant way and allow the Cabinet to have information that we don't currently have access to, and I would argue that we probably should have done to be able to support such a significant and controversial recommendation, that we actually defer it, and if we were to defer it with a view to having that information at the next Finance and Resources meeting, I would be happy to withdraw temporarily my proposal. Otherwise, I would just have my proposal stand.
Yuan.
Yes, thanks for letting me come back. I've turned to Amanda here. I don't think there's a particular timing issue that would militate against that happening, that 2.4 is deferred until the next Finance and Resources Committee, which is the beginning of December. I don't know how these things work technically, but
no, I think that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, I guess the only sort of observation I would make is that I think obviously in terms of schools having that awareness that it might be a potential decision would be useful. But yeah, in terms of the practicalities of coming back next time with some detailed information about the individual schools' balances and setting, I guess, a comparison of schools' balances compared to general balances, etc., to allow that. Not a problem that we do that next time.
So you are both happy for Councillor Anne to propose that we defer this till next time? Yeah?
Yeah, and that's based on full and thorough disclosure of the information we've talked about in relation to reserves and impact and views. That'd be great. Thanks very much.
Right. So are you happy, therefore, to change your proposal to deferring?
Yeah, as long as the wording is about that, we need full and thorough disclosure of the impact and the budget impact and also what the available earmarked reserves, general reserves and balances, so that we can make an informed scrutiny and therefore support otherwise the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chris Hughes, are you ready to second that change?
Yes,
briefly?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Gronwy-Edwards,
quickly, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just pleased that Anne has considered changing the recommendation, because certainly there's not an intention by Cabinet at all to keep figures from scrutiny. So vital that those figures do come forward in time. And as Andrew Kirkham will say, this is a journey. And this is just part of the journey. We're at this stage at the moment. Work is ongoing with the schools, as it is in my portfolio, looking at all the challenges that we face in delivering budgets. So to single out schools on their own, I think, would be a mistake at this time. But certainly all members will get the figures before the final decision is taken. So I'm pleased that you are not checking out the recommendation today.
Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Gronwy. Peter Lewis.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just a clarification that Councillor Anne and Councillor Chris are actually agreeing to approve 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 and deferred 2.4.
Thank you. Anne, can you clarify that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, lovely. Yawn. I've got no other speakers, so I shall go to Sally and the vote. Utisha,
Do you want?
Sally.
Okay, yeah, so we are recommending 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, and Councillor Anne's proposal that 2.4 be deferred. So for, against or abstain, Councillor Phil Capper.
For.
Councillor Jeff Corrie.
For.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
For.
Councillor Chris Hughes.
Obliged.
Councillor Wynne Ellis-Jones.
Obliged.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
Obliged.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor John Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
For.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
For.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne.
Obliged.
Yeah, that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. I can now confirm that that decision has been passed. Right. The last item today is item 10C, council tax premiums on long-term empty homes and second homes. And presenting this is Susan Plum. Good morning.
Susan, and thank you for being patient and waiting.
Yeah, thank you.
When you're ready, Sue.
Good morning. My name is Susan Plum and I'm the Local Taxation Manager for Conway. This report follows on from the meeting of the Affordable Housing Council Tax Premium Working Group on the 13th of October 2021. The working group met to review the levels of premium on long-term empty homes and second homes as set out by the Council on the 16th of December 2020. The working group were presented with a detailed report which can be found in Appendix 1, which includes the minutes of the meeting. In the working group report, we covered information available from neighbouring authorities, any updates from Welsh Government, the latest consultation results, along with the risks, resource implications and the likely additional revenue associated with the premiums. We have also outlined how this income could be spent for housing purposes. The working group recommendations are outlined in paragraph 2. The recommendations are to revoke the decision to charge a 50% council tax premium on both second homes and long-term empty homes from April 2022 and replace with a 25% council tax premium on second homes and 50% on long-term empty homes from the 1st of April 2022 in line with 21-22. To recommend an indicative level of 50% premium on both long-term empty homes and second homes from the 1st of April 2023, subject to review during 22-23. It is also recommended that the advice of the Strategic Director for Finance and Resources should be noted, and this can be found in paragraph 3.17. Just to run through the key points in the report, the Housing Wales Act 2014 provides that local authorities in Wales have the discretion to charge up to 100% premium on both second homes and long-term empty homes from the 1st of April 2017. The Welsh Government guidance can be found in the appendices of the working group, which also outlines the exceptions from paying the premium. Since then, members have carefully considered the implications and the risks associated with the introduction of the council tax premiums, and members exercise the Council's discretion to introduce premiums from April 2019. The decision to charge a premium and the level of premium is reviewed each year. On the 16th of December 2020, Council revoked the decision to charge 50% premium on both categories and replaced this with a continuation of 25% on second homes and 50% on long-term empty properties from April 2021. An indicative level premium of 50% on both categories was recommended for 22-23, and Council confirmed that the working group should be reconvened to discuss the housing issues within the county, including both planning and financial issues. The working group have received an overview of the proposed principal development residence policy from the Strategic Planning Policy Officer and the Holiday Homes Research commissioned by Gwynedd Council, along with the recommendations from that report. After consideration of the information available and the most recent consultation results, the working group recommends that the premiums for both long-term empty homes and second homes remain the same as in the current year for 22-23. So a 50% premium on long-term empty properties and 25% on second homes. The working group also recommend that the indicative level premiums for 23-24 be set at 50% on both categories, subject to another review and further consultation. The working group will continue to meet annually to review the impact of the premiums and make recommendations for consideration. The key areas for member to consider are covered in paragraph 3.8 to 3.11. The premium is intended to be a tool to bring long-term empty properties back into use, increase the supply of affordable housing and enhance the sustainability of local communities. However, there are potential negative consequences of increasing the premium, which are largely financial and include avoidance, as covered in the working group report under paragraph 4, risks to the council tax base, and other financial risks and additional administration. Key learning from the experiences of other authorities and the response to the public consultations held by Conway are there are varying degrees of avoidance depending on the level of the premium and the way it is applied to both types of properties. Unsurprisingly, previous consultations have provided a negative response from those likely to be affected and included comments about second homeowners adding value to the economy when they occupy their property. It is still relatively early to see what, if any, impact the council tax premiums have had on Welsh language and tourism within Conway. We had an excellent response to the public consultation on premiums, which was open from the 12th of July 2021 to the 20th of August 2021. Second home and long-term empty property owners were alerted to the consultation along with other key stakeholders. There were 906 respondents to the online consultation and 590 respondents completed the Qualities Monitoring Survey. An equality impact assessment has been completed and it is not considered that a decision on premiums will impact disproportionately on any protected characteristics. It is estimated that the premiums on both long-term empty and second homes in the current financial year will generate a net additional income of around 548,000. Members have previously allocated 540,000 of this to support the pressures in the housing services budget. It is important for members to consider very carefully the financial consequences that may accrue from increasing the premium. Table 1 in this report provides an estimate of the net additional income that may be available if premiums are applied at different levels. The assumptions are outlined in paragraph 3.14. You can see from the table that the estimated additional council tax income behaves in a non-linear manner depending on the level of premium to be applied. This is because the higher the premium, the greater the likelihood and cost of avoidance and leakage. It must also be remembered that any potential losses would not only result in the loss of the premium itself, but the underlying council tax income. As members are aware, this is a difficult area to advise upon, and the uncertainties around the action homeowners will take. Therefore, a cautious approach should be taken when considering the level of the premium. It is recommended by the Strategic Director for Finance and Resources under paragraph 3.17 and 3.18 that the revenue generated from the premium is used to support the housing and homelessness budget, and any surplus is held in contingency until there's greater certainty around the outturn level of the premium. Welsh Government are currently consulting on discretionary powers which allow local authorities to levy a higher rate of council tax on second homes and long-term empty properties. Welsh Government are also asking for views on and evidence on the criteria used to define a self-catering accommodation for local tax purposes. If in the future Welsh Government were to change the criteria for self-catering accommodation so that making the switch from council tax to NDR is more stringent, then the potential for additional income would be much greater and fewer losses would be incurred. The options are detailed under paragraph 4 for members to consider, and details of the consultation are outlined in paragraph 5 with the observation of the Cabinet Member for Finance, Revenue and Benefits. And that concludes the presentation of the report. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Sue. Thank
you very much, Sue.
Size report. Could you take it off screen, please? Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you for that report, Sue. Right, mae gen I ddau lawr.
I have two hands up. Councillor Aaron Wynne and then Councillor Andrew Wood. Aaron Wynne. Yes, thank you, Chair. I've mentioned lots of times in meetings about this housing emergency that are facing young people like myself and young families in Conwy. As I'm sure you know, house prices over the years, last year's has risen significantly, and house prices has risen fastest in Conwy than any other county in Wales. During last year, only last year, 19%, they've risen 19% here in Conwy. So second homes and empty homes play a significant part in the need for housing, and then also the increase as well, especially here in the rural area. And the rural area are already living with second homes, shops are closing, services are disappearing, and the county has been responsible for closing primary schools because of lack of young people, and the lack of young people because families can't afford to buy a house in their area, their locality. Only last week, the cabinets were discussing the house pressures that exist here in Conwy, and Cabinet Member over Housing said quite plainly, in that meeting that we need to increase the premium on how you know, I agree with Gronwy and I share his frustration. So differently to what it says in the report, Chair, I'd like to propose that we move forward like planned and raise that premium for empty and second homes to 50%. And I encourage you members to support so that we can make a small step to help the families of Conwy. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Aaron. Andrew.
It gets slower this time. Mute. Right, Susan, get your pen out. I've got a few questions for you. On the table 1, can we just go back to table 1? That is that's an estimate. That is not. It is just a very rough estimate that came from possibly Andy Kirkham a couple of years ago. Yes, it's not been updated, has it, with accurate information?
Yes, myself and the Strategic Director of Finance and Resources have been through that table. So, yeah, that's the current position.
It's okay. Okay. So really, from what I can gather from the public consultation, that they actually sort of looked at it, and 33%, which is the highest figure, thought that 100% would be the best way to go for long-term empty and second homes, which I wouldn't agree with, to be honest. Second homes is a very emotive area, so I'm going to leave second homes and part that, because that is, I do agree with you, that is going to drive people out of our rates into business rates until anything changes in Welsh Government. But long-term empty, which is, I know is not such a great problem, and for members that are here at this meeting now, there's been some fantastic officer presentations. It doesn't say in here, but we've actually got more resources. We've got a housing officer for the east and a housing officer for the west now, who's going to look into empty houses and so on and so forth. So that is exciting. But the thing that bothers me is the report originally, in what we were presented, it says that the long-term empty is stubborn. Okay, it's not a great deal, but we've done a fantastic job of bringing them back. So I would have thought they would come back even quicker. And I won't put this as a proposal, but I want the committee task and finish group to look at it, or working group as it would be known, 100%. Because, you know, end of the day, these are empty homes that need to come back in. There is a raft of measures. Everybody says there's no measures. Loads of measures there to help people bring them back. So that's it. That's that one. I'm going to park that one, because the second homes thing, as I say, until Welsh Government give us a bit more information on that, I'm interested. But interesting enough, I just want to go page 183, which is table 4. And that's an interesting table. Now, I do understand about the Welsh base and so on and so forth. But from 18, 19 and 20, the total, according to your figures, lost premium in those years, including, it says the asterisk, is £384,000. So for 3 years, 384,000. From what you've just told me in the other table, that you've actually taken 1.62 in extra premium. So I say that's a good result. And I say that's indicative of your policies working. I think we just need to step up to the mark and be a bit braver, but maybe, as I say, maybe not this year, but we need to look at the working group and look at it closer and see what else we can do. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you. And that's the question as well, Sue, is that figure, am I right there, that we've taken, or we've lost 384,000, but we've taken 1.62 extra in extra premium?
Sue? Have we got an answer for Councillor Wood?
Perhaps I can come in.
Yes, by all means, Amanda.
Yeah, the 384. Just to clarify, the 384,000 is effectively a loss year on year cumulatively in the base. So effectively, it's not just a one-off loss. It is a loss year on year. The 1.6. Could you, I don't suppose you could just point me as to where you're picking that figure up, Councillor Andrew?
It's 540,000 a year that in one of your tables, which you say that you've earned for towards.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so it's 540,000 times 3 years, which is it tabled for the homeless and exactly split down. So yeah, that's where I got my 1.62 from. And you know, it's a bit ambiguous. So the asterisk says includes lost premium in those years.
Yeah, what that
both ways.
Yeah, what that means is obviously the council only introduced a premium in 2019. So the losses from, you know, in table 4 from say 12, 13, 13, 14, etc. They were losses of people. Of houses moving out of the council tax base into an NDR, but obviously at that point in time there was no premium. So effectively, if somebody moved out, it was the council tax of 1130 using 1213 as an example. So the 37,000 divided by the 1130 would give you the number of properties that moved out at that point in time. When I say the asterisk includes the premium, at that point, obviously because the premium is 25%, then effectively you're not just losing, using 2021 as a figure, we're not just losing the 1681, but we're actually losing 125% of that for every property that's lost at that point in time. So the reason those last 2 years have got the asterisks by them is because it's only from April 19 that the council introduced the premium. Before that, it was the 100% that was lost. Post that, it's the 125% that's lost.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to bring to your attention, though, that obviously it was following the introduction of small business rates relief in 2010 that businesses started moving over, and obviously it was accelerated when we put a premium on it, which is, you know, that's just common sense. So it's actually not as bad as we think. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not an ideal situation, but what I'm trying to say is we need to be a little bit braver, possibly, in putting a little bit more of a premium on second homes and definitely on long-term empties. So there's lots of people there to speak, so I shall leave it at that. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Wood.
Councillor John Vaughan.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I've spoken on this many, many times. In Conway Town, we've got more second homes and more Airbnbs and holiday accommodation. Over the last, I don't know, say 10 years, I have known second homeowners in this town change over their property to holiday homes. So therefore, we have lost their council tax. It's a huge risk here. And as for my residents and locals, I can tell you, there's far more disruption on holiday homes, Airbnb, staying for 2 nights, 1 night, pressure on car parks, pressure. They put their rubbish in everybody's bins. They don't behave as well as second homeowners. Second homeowners do contribute to the economy. They have local painters, local builders, etc., etc. I'm totally against. We really can't take the risk of losing more council tax by looking at second homeowners only. We really can't. We must step up the empty homes. We must step it up. And I don't see, Aaron, my heart bleeds for you and for young people, but I do not see how increasing premiums on second homeowners will help you and more young people buy a home, because they will still pay the price.
Diolch yn fawr, John. Right.
Thank you, John. Councillor Wyn-Jones. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the reports. I feel a bit like deja vu. We've had these meetings for years and nothing seems to be changing. What has changed in my community we're concentrating this morning on the financial cost for the council, when people moving from, holiday home to an Airbnb. I'm sorry, but I don't accept that argument. One thing is somebody is running a business, he's running a business. There's a question we should be challenging high and strongly is, is house that's up for, holiday for 70 days a year, that's what we should be debating. How do we make it work? It's obvious. We've heard we need to be careful. We have been careful for years. And what's happening is costs. House prices are going up higher than anywhere else in Wales. And there's an element of that is that the premium second homes in Conwy is lower than it is in similar places like in Gwynedd and Anglesey. The displacements we're worried about is happening. That's what's happening now. And it's not the flipping that's the problem. It's that people are buying houses that are homes and turning them to Airbnb. That's not flipping. It's people trying to do business and changing use of a home from being a home to a business. And that's something to worry about. But we have to do something about the second homes as well. The only thing we can do is raise the premium. And it shows that the house prices in Conwy has gone higher faster than Gwynedd, means that it is working. So we have to tackle this. We have to be brave, and we have to treat second homes and empty homes the same, because with an empty house, all you have to do is put a sofa there and a bed, and they can call it a holiday let, and they can save 25% of their tax straight away. I second Aaron's proposal, and if you are genuinely worried, I know Joan says she's worried and she's sympathising with, but this is a way, if you are worried about rural areas, young people, then, we're losing homes weekly from the sector to be holiday lets, holiday homes. If you are worried about this, then you have an opportunity now to do something about it.
Cynghorydd Wyn. Cynghorydd Nigel Smith.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think Wyn answered his own question there, didn't he, when he was talking about long-term empty properties and putting a settee in there and calling them holiday lets, because then there'll be no council tax premium to be paid. So we lose out 100% continually. And I think, we should all listen to the wise words of Joan, really, Councillor Joan, is that, this is not just a rural issue. It affects the whole of the county. Holiday homes, second homes. And the problem is that, if they register as businesses, Airbnbs or whatever, then we lose that council tax income, and that affects us, even worse. So wise words, Joan, and thank you very much for that. I'm just wondering whether, because the big issue here is the long-term empty properties, and the numbers are ridiculous, and I just wonder whether we've ever thought about a sliding scale starting off. I think a long-term empty property is classed as empty for 6 months. So if you start off at 50% for 6 months, and if it's empty for say over 12 months, we up it to 75%, and if it's empty for over 2 years, we up it to 100%, and like a sliding scale. Has anybody ever thought about that? Sue?
That is an option that's open for consideration, but yes, that could be applied.
Yeah, well, personally, I'd like to see that applied, because we've got houses being empty for many years, and there's no incentive for them you know, I don't want to be caning people all the time, but we need these properties back on the market. I'll be happy to support that. I don't want to see any more penalising our second home users any more than we are at this moment in time. I think, or any more than what the proposal is, because we're in danger of losing those to basically commercial properties and businesses. So that won't help anybody out. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. Next, we have Councillor Peter Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. If I could first of all come back on the comment that Councillor Heron made. In my ward, for instance, social housing has properties, there's no demand for it. That's not because of young people, it's because they have to move away for the work. So I don't think, you know, that's a valid argument. But I'd just like to give the committee some information that perhaps hasn't been aired this morning. In terms of second homes, since 2016, there's been a reduction of 142 in those. And I think the interesting figure is when you look at the long-term empty homes, 68% of those long-term empty homes are considered to be in the affordable tax band, council tax band. The other thing in terms of long-term empty homes, they've been reduced by 222 in the last year. And 680 of those properties actually attracted the premium on long-term empty homes. And the number reduced by 146 in the last 12 months. That's 22%. So that's showing that 50% premium is working. And I think members really do need to look at what has happened in our neighbouring authorities, where they've actually shown a reduction in premium income following an increase in the premium percentage. So I do encourage members to support the recommendations there, because I think we've already talked about the pressures on us, and I think the risk of potentially, if you look at that table 1, of losing another 200,000 in the current year is a risk we can't take. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. Is that a proposal, Councillor Peter, that we go with the recommendations?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Cynghorydd Gronwy Edwards.
Councillor Gronwy Edwards.
Thank
you, Chair, and thank you for everybody for their comments. The points Aaron is doing is very fair. It's what I said in Cabinet, and in the future, I'd like to see us, you know, 100% extra on second homes. But in the situation we're in at the moment, that's not working for Conwy, and it's a very danger, you know, if we are going to change the recommendation in front of us. I think in the year we're having, it's just going to cause more problems. You know, especially if Welsh governments change the plans, and I would support Aaron's proposal, but at the moment I think we're better to stay where we are with the recommendations in front of us, and definitely, you know, putting more pressure on Welsh government to change the system, that we can manage the thing, you know, better through taxation or planning. But at the moment it's too early. You know, I agree 100%. We need to do more to secure housing for our young people, but at the moment, the resources, we don't have the resources to do that. The tools, and you know, we don't have the tools unless Welsh governments change our rights in a way. Thank you, Gronwy. I'm going to bring in Rhyn Gareth in. Thank you, Chair. It's just a matter of what we have here is an improvement about the recommendation in front of us. So it's just maybe put the improvements, which is Aaron's proposal, through the vote first, and then if that through, then we put the recommendation, Peter's recommendation, forward. Just to thank you for that clarification, Rhyn. Right, Councillor Wyn-Jones. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me come back. I don't think people are naive and thinking that Nigel's, with the sofa and the bed in, that means people won't pay tax. Obviously, they have to be running a business. The question I was raising is, are they running, is a business running for 70 days? Should it be higher? There was a point I should have raised before. Obviously, money is more important for some people, members than others. The government, for what I understand, they have a scheme that when houses flip from second homes to businesses. Can you tell me the scheme they have to reimburse councils?
I think that's a question for you. Are you aware of that, Sue?
Sorry, do you mean in terms of the redistribution for non-domestic rates?
Well,
what I understand, Sue, is that this has only come into my attention recently when it was mentioned that councils would lose money when buildings flip from second homes to be a holiday let, that the government has a scheme to reimburse councils.
I don't know whether that's something Amanda can comment on, but
yeah, I'm not aware that there's a scheme to reimburse. What does eventually happen, but obviously there's a lag of a year or two, is that when Welsh Government distribute the revenue support grant, what it does is it calculates the expected funding for a local authority based on, you'll be familiar with, the number of pupils we have, the number of adults we have, the number of miles of road we have, etc., etc. There's a massive formula that calculates effectively our standard spending assessment. And what they then do is they take off of the standard spending assessment the amount of council tax they anticipate that you will collect. And that is obviously based on the your council tax base, effectively. So if we were to lose a number of properties out of our council tax base over time, then ultimately the expectation of the amount of council tax we would receive would be lower, and therefore the settlement of the RSG would be higher. But effectively it takes a lag of time, and also it's not a direct recovery, because ultimately it depends where you still sit proportionately compared to every other council in Wales.
Okay, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Wyn?
Are you happy, Wyn, with the response? Yes, it's not quite with what I understood, but thank you. Yes. Right. Okay.
Before I ask Anna McCaffrey, I'm going to allow Ewan Davies, the Chief Executive, because he wants to come in. He might have something important to say. I don't know.
I hopefully it's either important or a clarification. I happened to be listening to the translation when Rhyn gave his advice to the committee, and the translation described Councillor Aaron's proposal as an improvement. What I think what Rhyn was seeking to advise is that it's an amendment to the proposal. So he wasn't casting any. I don't think he was. I mean, any judgment on whether it was a better proposal or not. It was simply procedurally. It's better to take it's appropriate to take the amendment first and then move on to the proposal. Diolch.
Yes, mi fedra I gadarnhau, because o'n i'n gwrando ar y
I can confirm, because I was listening to Welsh, that is what Rhyn was suggesting.
Thank you for waiting patiently, Councillor Anne.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Ewan, for that sort of clarification. I mean, I speak as a rural member where homes are being snapped up within a week. Not all of them for second homes, but many of them. And I'm aware or sense that, you know, the numbers are rising and rising, but I've no idea exactly what those numbers are, or indeed what those numbers are across the county, or indeed what the sort of trend is. But it does, just stepping back for a minute from this discussion and this report, it does seem that, again, we're conflating two quite different things here. One is, you know, the desire to optimise council tax, and therefore it's the loss of council tax. And also it's about the potential loss of homes, which is very much what Aaron is talking about, and obviously Councillor Wynne as well. So those two things are conflated within this report and within these recommendations, and potentially within the work of the working group that's been looking at this. And it also does seem to me that we've actually got conflicting interests here in the population at large. One is we've got the interests of entrepreneurs who want to make money. Second is the interests of residents who need a home. Why wouldn't they? And then probably thirdly is that we've got some residents who are also entrepreneurs, and they've already got a home, but they actually want to make money out of existing homes as well. So it's quite a complex area, it appears to me. And I'm not aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we've actually got a second homes strategy with sort of a tactical approach in terms of what, as a county, we're actually going to do. I think somebody mentioned earlier in the discussion that Gwynedd have been quite proactive in this, and certainly I've read some stuff in the press in terms of what they've been doing, which includes sort of lobbying. So I think there's quite a bit of work, I think, to be done here, and whether that in fact is the work of the existing working group, which is obviously looks all the time at council tax premium, in brackets affordable housing, or whether in fact we ought to have an additional group who actually looks at, you know, a strategy for second homes, so that we really get underneath and into the bones of what the issues are and potentially what some of the solutions are, because I think until we do that, and we just conflate these two things ongoing, I don't think we ever resolve the underlying issue. Patently, we want to protect council tax. Why wouldn't we? Because obviously we're struggling for money, but also crucially, we obviously need to provide homes for our sort of families and our residents. So for me, I would second the recommendations here as far as this year going into next year is concerned, because the group have worked hard and obviously the numbers are being crunched, etc. And obviously a decision sort of needs to be made. But if there isn't a strategy, I would make a proposal that either the working group is tasked with a second home strategy and some solutions, or indeed that there be if that group can't do that, a second group be looked at, because this problem is escalating, and obviously we need to have some strategy and solutions to deliver it. So that would be, I'd support the recommendations as they stand for this year going into next, and I think we need to do some work around what is our second home strategy in Conway.
Is that an amendment, Anne?
Yeah, it will be, because it's an addition to the existing full recommendation. So that's a fifth recommendation. Thanks, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Right, I'm going to allow Councillor Aaron Wynne, he's had his hand up for a while, to come back.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for letting me come back in.
I just wanted to address Councillor Jones' point. The premiums were introduced to deter people from buying second homes. You know, we've been crying out for powers so that we can take action, and now we're not taking action. Premiums on second homes are increasing in other counties, which means buying a second home will be cheaper in Conway. Also, someone coming to visit their second home may well add value to the local economy when they're here, but let's not forget, a family living here for the whole year adds much more value to the economy. And to answer Councillor Nigel's point, you're absolutely right. Conway is a great place for tourism. But if young people can't afford to live and work here, the tourism industry will fall flat on its face.
Yeah. No more, yeah. Pregeth drosodd, Aaron?
Pregeth drosodd.
Diolch yn fawr. Right.
Thank you, Aaron. Councillor Nigel Smith.
Make it brief if you can.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, Aaron, you're quite right. Unfortunately, employment is something else that we need to look at locally. But I think, you know, Councillor Peter quite rightly pointed out on table 1, that is the truth, that is the reality of anything that we may implement here today. And as all our departments are under pressure, I can only support the recommendation as it stands. But I would like to ask that the working group that's looking into council tax consider a sliding scale for long-term empty properties and really crank up that pressure to get them back on the market. Thank you, Chair.
So is that an amendment?
A minor one, you might say.
A minor one, okay. I'll go back to Councillor Peter Lewis. Are you willing to accept Councillor Nigel's amendments?
Well, Chair, I think in fairness to the working group, they actually look at a host of information, really. And you'll be aware of the report that we considered that was commissioned by Gwyneth and looked at aspects on that. And I think it's worth, while I'm speaking, that we also looked at the actual percentage of second homes that there are in Conway. And they're under 4% across. Obviously, there are high areas, particularly around Councillor Jones' area. But you take my ward, for instance, there's 553 properties, I think there is. And there's only 12 second homes. So you can see it's not in my rural area, it's not a huge problem.
Thank you, Peter.
I personally think I've certainly noted the comments that Councillor Anne and Councillor Nigel have made, which will be considered. Personally happy for the recommendation to stand, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Diolch yn fawr. Right, Councillor Gronwy Edwards and then Councillor Chris Hughes. And then I'll bring this discussion to an end. Iawn.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, and I'm sure this won't be the end of the discussion. We'll discuss it again before we actually set the council tax and the premiums, no doubt. But certainly, on the point Anne made about the group looking at more power, more complex issues, that is happening within the group, and I thank the group for all the work they've done. On a separate point of setting up another group, I think that would be unnecessary. I attend the new group that's been set up by Welsh Government, which is a cross-party group of all political affiliations and all the agencies dealing with housing, and it's led by a Mabon ap Gwynfor Assembly member. I think so. There's a lot of work going on there, and hopefully, well, I hope that before we actually make a decision on this finally, that we will have a bit more feedback from the Welsh Government. But I think there's a lot of work going on. I can see it from all angles, and I think a lot of the houses at the moment that are being bought up in my area are not just for second homes. They are people actually moving in the area to live and work because they've seen the benefits of working from home in such a vibrant area, and that's also putting an increase on housing prices. So I hope the committee today will appreciate the work the working group has done and go with the recommendation.
Diolch yn fawr. Councillor Chris.
Thank you.
And thanks for being patient, Chris.
Thanks, Councillor Austin. If members recall earlier in the meeting, we noted the informal minutes of the meeting of chairs and vice chairs, And item 40, the minute 40 of the vice chairs and vice chairs refers to a report which was, or a proposal which was put to the informal chairs following completion of a topic selection form by Councillor Aaron Wynne. And that related to expanding the terms of reference of the working group. It was the view of the chairs and vice chairs work group that is exactly what we should do, that the terms of the working group already set up should be expanded to undertake this additional work and to seek possible solutions and share good practice in dealing with the issue. So I think that was discussed at chairs and vice chairs, and it doesn't seem to need a massive change to what the group's already doing to actually support that. And I think that's what Councillor Ann was proposing in the beginning, that we look at extending the remit of the working group slightly to allow us to look further into the impact that that it's having in other counties, and ensure that we deliver policy for Conway that is inclusive, rather than just looking at the council tax and second homes council tax elements.
Thank you, Chris. Can I just tell you that Amanda Hughes has put something on chat, so maybe you'd like to read that. Okay, do we have that, Rhyn?
I'm going to Rhyn. Thank you, Chair.
We have numerous amendments that we're mulling here at the moment. So I thought what we should do is deal with the initial one that Councillor Aaron put forward, because that it goes to the crux of 2.2. So that would be an amendment to 2.2, which essentially states that we won't change the decision, and we will be going forward on 50% at the recommendation to Cabinet on that basis. So we put that forward first of all. We'll deal with the other amendments after we take the vote on that one, so that we just are clear on what basis we're moving forward.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Rhyn. Before I ask Sally to call out your names for the vote, if I can just say something myself on the matter. I take Peter Lewis's point about second homes not being a problem in his ward. However, in my ward, it is a problem. It's a huge problem. Also, I take his point about the problem only being 3%. But in my view, that's 3% too much. So we'll now go ahead to the vote.
Yeah, so as Rhyn said, we'll vote on Councillor Aaron's proposal first, so his amendment to 2.2, that it's 50%. Okay, so it's for, against or abstain. Councillor Phil Capper.
Erbyn.
Councillor Jeff Corrie.
Against.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams. Councillor Pauline still here?
She messaged that she had to leave the meeting. She had an appointment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chris Hughes.
Erbyn.
Councillor Wynne Ellis-Jones.
Blaid.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
Against.
Councillor Dave Rees.
Against.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
O blaid.
Councillor John Roberts.
Roma yn erbyn.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
Against.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
Against.
Councillor Aaron Wynne.
O blaid.
Okay, so that's 3 voted in favour and 10 voted against, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr. Right, and all that to you.
Thank you. Back to you now, Gareth. Rhyn, sorry, Rhyn.
So the first additional proposal that was put forward was from Councillor Ann. So did we have a seconder for that, Chair?
I don't think we did.
So could you repeat your proposed amendment, Councillor Ann, and then we'll see if we can get a seconder for that.
Yeah, so it would be to agree the recommendations of 1 to 4 as they currently exist, and to include a fifth, which is to, in Chris's words, extend the remit of the existing working group so that they investigate the size and scope of the second homes problem with a view to doing research and coming up with appropriate solutions if needed.
Have I got a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Joan Vaughan, thank you. Iawn, Gareth? Yr un, mae'n ddrwg gen i.
Iawn, diolch cadeirydd.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Then
this is where it gets complicated. The original proposal is from Councillor Peter, so that's 2.1 through to 2.4. So we have an amendment now from Councillor Ann to add a fifth, which is in relation to the working group. So I'd suggest, Chair, that we take that vote now and then we'll get to Nigel's after that one.
Okay, before we do that, I see Phil Capper has got his hand up. What do you want to say quickly, Phil?
Yeah, well, as Councillor Chris quite rightly said, I mean, this is rather superfluous actually, because it's already agreed, I think, that, this will happen anyway. So I'm not quite sure why we're, the remit of the working group can be and has been expanded. So I'm not sure why we're even voting on it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ann?
Chair, I mean, obviously, I'm not aware that the remit of this group has been amended. Obviously, if I could see that in print, I could obviously withdraw it. But obviously, it's never reported. The group has never reported specifically on second homes in terms of what's the size and scope of the problem and potentially solutions. So I'm unclear as to where the evidence is that they've looked at it, but they haven't made any recommendations because they don't think it's appropriate, presumably. But this group has been in existence for a long time, and to my knowledge, they just come back year in year about council tax.
So briefly, you haven't changed your mind. You want to go ahead with your proposal, yeah?
Got it in mind, Austin. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Councillor Peter Lewis, briefly, please.
Well, I think the working group, in actual fact, have been carrying out the work that Councillor Ann actually is asking for, because we've looked at reports that have been produced by various bodies over the year to see whether this actually affects our position. So I've no doubt that what she's asked for, we will continue to do when it's next reviewed.
And briefly, do you want to come back?
Well, I just don't see we ever have a report on the issue, really. And, it's quite interesting that we don't actually know the scope and size of the problem as a county, really. So, no, it stands for me that we come back.
Thank you. Chris, briefly, please, because I've got John Roberts afterwards.
Yeah, Chair, I had a slightly different take on the issue to Councillor Phil in terms of what was agreed at chairs and vice chairs. It's my understanding that it was a that chairs and vice chairs is informal. It can't actually change anything or do anything, and that it was a recommendation from chairs and vice chairs to this committee that the remit be extended in order to do that, because this is the only this is the parent committee to the chairs and to the task and finish group, and it was my understanding that it is this committee that has to make that recommendation for that working group's remit to be slightly amended, and it is only slightly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor John Roberts.
Councillor John Roberts.
As chair of the working group, as you know, we were tasked to look at everything that concerned the premium and the affordable housing. I can confirm that we did that, and we still do, and we will take into account everything that Councillor Ann is suggesting, and all of that is balanced and is argued at the meeting. I can also confirm that whilst we are arguing here now and debating, sorry, not arguing, of course, we never do that, the Welsh Government is closing the consultation, as somebody's mentioned, on Wednesday. And I would say that the reason that we put this forward was to wait for that consultation to close and to wait for the Welsh government to give their recommendations, which will be in the new year. So therefore, that's the reason why we held back. We didn't want to change anything. So I think we should be aware of that and just carry on with the recommendation as it is. That's all I have to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Briefly, please.
Chair?
Yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. Just to totally endorse what Councillor John Roberts said then. I was past chair in 2020. I know Chris has been chair as well. All the information, we've got lots of information from Gwynedd, Denbighshire, all over the place. And it really has been debated.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that maybe go forward with that. As John says, wait for Welsh Government to come back to us on their consultation and go from there on. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Right, dwi am mynd yn ôl at
Right, I'm going back to Rhain. Is it okay that we carry on with this, what Councillor Anne McCaffrey has proposed, which has been seconded by Councillor John Vaughan, and then if that isn't passed, that we go back to the recommendations in the reports. Am I correct in saying? Yes, you are, Chair.
We have a proposal, we have a seconder, so we need to put that up. If you don't agree with it, you can vote against, of course. So that would be the appropriate way of dealing with it. So we have a proposal and a seconder. So yes, put that.
Right.
Reen and Chair.
Yeah.
You know, based upon what seems to be some sound content from a couple of members here, I'd be happy if we're accepting it, that we change my recommendation, if that's possible at this stage, given the fact that it's been seconded, to be more that we bring forward a report on our second homes problem and strategy and solutions, because what I'm hearing is that it's already considered under the remit of this working group, but I'm just not aware that we've had divorced from council tax rises or otherwise that we've ever had a report on it. So if that's helpful and more focused, I'd be happy to make that amendment.
Well,
I'd be happy to second that.
Thank you.
The only problem with that is we're proposing something completely different now to what we originally put forward. So I would suggest that you could add on to your proposal. So rather than taking the proposal completely away, add to the proposal to say that they will respond post the Welsh Government's decision as to the way forward, because until that happens, really, we won't know what we're reporting on, will we? So you can add those words that they report back after Welsh Government have come to conclusions as to the way forward.
I'm happy to do that because that seems fairly sensible. But what I'm really just being clear is I want a report to come back to Finance and Resources on the state of play in terms of second homes. So yeah, happy to do that.
Okay, Sean, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm listening to all the people who, such as John, who are on this working group. So I'll withdraw my seconder from Councillor Anne, because I think if they're going to be doing it, then fine. It's too complicated.
Okay, all right. So that leaves Councillor Anne McCaffrey's amendment without a seconder. Is there anybody else who wants to second Anne McCaffrey? No.
I'll second Councillor Anne, because I think bringing the report back soon.
Fine. That's all you have to say is that you're seconding it. That's good enough for me. Phil Capper, quickly now.
Mr. Chairman, I'm quite happy to support a report. You know, I can quite go with that. It was just my previous comment still stood.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Right. Can you take your hand down, Phil? Thank you. Right, okay. I am quickly losing patience because I have a grandson waiting for me to take over babysitting duties from my now most probably wife, who's pulling half her hair out. So we shall go on with the vote. Sally, diolch yn fawr.
Okay, so Priyan will correct me if I'm wrong. So we're now voting on recommendations 2.1 to 2.4 within the report, plus Councillor Anne McCaffrey's addition, sorry.
Yeah, we need to have a vote on Councillor McCaffrey's proposal first, because the rest of it will fall. People won't know what they're voting on. So let's put that up first and then we'll deal with the rest.
So Councillor McCaffrey's proposal only? Yeah, no problem. Okay, Councillor Phil Capper?
4, I think.
Councillor Jeff Corrie?
Oh, I think as well 4.
Councillor Chris Hughes?
Obliged.
Councillor Wyn Ellis-Jones?
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Peter Lewis?
Abstain.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey?
4.
Councillor Dave Rees?
4.
Councillor Austin Roberts?
Yn erbyn.
Councillor John Roberts?
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Nigel Smith?
O blaid.
Councillor Joan Vaughan?
4.
Councillor Andrew Wood?
Against.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne?
Yn erbyn.
Okay, so we have 1 abstention, 5 against, and 7 for. So that's carried.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr, Sally.
Thank you, Sally. I can then confirm that that proposal has been passed. Okay, that's... Chair, before we finish, just so we get this correct, I don't want to make things more complicated, but
we need a vote on the whole of the proposal now, because we haven't had a vote on the 2.3 and 2.4.
Yeah.
And also Nigel has asked that a sliding scale could be considered. I'm not sure whether the Councillor Peter would be happy to include that within the recommendation or not.
Peter?
Well,
quickly, please.
I'm not personally, because I think the working group will actually look at all options, really. My chair may take a different view.
Okay, Nigel, are you willing to... sorry, John?
I have every faith in Councillor John Roberts considering with his fellow members a possible sliding scale.
Okay, thank you. Anne,
thank you,
quickly.
Pete, thank you.
Quickly,
it's just that I'm confused. I thought I'd actually proposed recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3.
You're not the
2.4.
only one who's confused, Anne Bach.
Yeah.
No, the reason why we had to take them separately is because we had another amendment to consider. So, which was Nigel's.
Yes.
So we had to take your amendment first, then Nigel's, then the whole lot. Sorry to make this complicated. It shouldn't be this complicated.
It's not you that's making things complicated. Okay, then.
Okay, so the rest of the recommendations from within the report. Councillor Phil Capper?
4.
Councillor Jeff Corrie?
4.
Councillor Chris Hughes?
Obliged.
Councillor Wyn Ellis-Jones?
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Peter Lewis?
4.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey?
Obliged.
Councillor Dave Rees?
4.
Councillor Austin Roberts?
Yn erbyn.
Councillor John Roberts?
Obliged.
Councillor Nigel Smith?
Obliged.
Councillor Joan Vaughan?
4.
Councillor Andrew Wood?
4.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne?
Yn erbyn.
So that's 3 against and 10 for. So that's passed, Chair.
Okay, that has been carried. And can I thank you, Rhyn, for your work? You've earned your salary today. And can I also thank you as well, everybody who's contributed today in the debate, to the members of the committee and also members who aren't members of this committee. Can I also thank the officers for their presentation: Phil Davis, Gareth Roach, Richard Evans, Amanda Hughes, Sandra Forrest, Hugh Williams, and Sue Plum. Can I also thank Hugh, who has helped in the background here, and also thank to Fion, the translator. Thank you all for the long debate. I'm going to look after my grandson. So till next time, bye. Thank you, Austin.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording stopped.